The crowd gathered under the scorching Arizona sun as the auctioneer's voice rang out across the dusty square of Fort Yuma in the summer of 1872. 3 sisters, sold as one lot, educated, hardworking, and healthy, who'll start the bidding. The Mercer sisters stood on the wooden platform, their wrists bound with rough rope. Their once fine dresses now travel-worn and dusty, as the crowd of rough-looking men eyed them with unsettling interest. Jedediah Grant sat atop his chestnut stallion at the edge of the crowd, his weathered face expressionless beneath his wide-brimmed hat. He hadn't come to Fort Yuma for an auction, certainly not one selling human beings, but the desperation in the eldest sister's eyes stopped him from riding on. What kind of man would he be if he simply passed by Beatrice Mercer? The eldest, at 22, stood protectively in front of her sisters, Clara and Alina, ages 20 and 18. They had journeyed west from Boston after their parents' deaths, only to be robbed, betrayed, and sold to cover a debt that wasn't theirs. Now they faced the cruel reality of the frontier, where women were scarce and men were willing to pay handsomely for wives, willing or otherwise. $200, shouted a voice from the crowd. $300, called another. The sisters huddled closer together as the bids climbed higher. Beatrice had promised their dying mother that she would keep her sisters safe, that they would remain together no matter what. It was a promise she feared she could no longer keep. $500. The bid came from a burly man with a scar across his cheek, his eyes dark with intent that made Beatrice's skin crawl. The auctioneer grinned, revealing tobacco-stained teeth. $500 once. $600, called another voice. $700, countered the scarred man, his hand resting on the pistol at his hip. Beatrice looked out at the sea of unfamiliar faces, her heart pounding. In that moment, she caught the eye of a tall figure at the back of the crowd, a man seated on horseback, watching the proceedings with an intensity that somehow didn't frighten her. $700 going once, going twice. The auctioneer raised his gavel. $1,000, called a clear, deep voice. The crowd parted as Jedediah Grant guided his horse forward. $1,000 for all 3 sisters, kept together. The auctioneer's eyebrows shot up. "Well now, that's mighty generous, sir." The scarred man spat on the ground. $1,100. Jedediah didn't hesitate. $1,500. A murmur ran through the crowd. That was more money than most men saw in a year. $1,500 going once. The scarred man glared at Jedediah but remained silent, going twice. The auctioneer scanned the crowd. Sold. To the gentleman on the chestnut horse. Relief flooded through Beatrice, followed immediately by uncertainty. What would this stranger demand of them? She watched as he dismounted and approached the auctioneer's table to pay the sum. The man with the scar intercepted Jedediah, speaking too low for the sisters to hear. Whatever was said made Jedediah's jaw tighten, but he simply brushed past the man and completed the transaction. Moments later, he stood before the 3 sisters on the platform. Up close, Beatrice could see that his face, though weathered by sun and wind, was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps 30. His blue eyes were kind as he withdrew a knife from his belt. Alina gasped and stepped back, but Beatrice held her ground, refusing to show fear. "I'm just cutting the ropes," Jedediah said quietly, slicing through their bonds with quick, careful movements. "My name is Jedediah Grant. I have a ranch about a day's ride from here." "Why did you buy us?" Beatrice asked, rubbing her chafed wrists. "Nobody should be sold like cattle," he replied simply. "My ranch has room for all of you. You can stay until you decide what you want to do next. No strings attached." Clara, always the most outspoken of the sisters, narrowed her eyes. "No strings. Men always want something." A ghost of a smile crossed Jedediah's face. "What I want is to do right by my mother's memory. She taught me better than to stand by while women are auctioned off." Beatrice studied him, searching for deceit but finding none. "We're grateful, Mr. Grant, but wary. We've learned the hard way that kindness on the frontier often comes with hidden costs." "Fair enough," he nodded. "I've got a wagon waiting. We should leave before your other admirers get any ideas." As they followed Jedediah through the crowd, Beatrice felt the glares of disappointed bidders, particularly the man with the scar. "Who was that man who bid against you?" she asked quietly. "Victor Holloway. owns the largest cattle operation in these parts. Used to owning people too, back before the war. Some habits die hard. Jedediah helped them into a wagon loaded with supplies. We'll camp tonight and reach the ranch tomorrow afternoon. That evening, as they made camp beside a small stream, Beatrice watched their rescuer care for his horses and build a fire with practiced ease. He gave them the wagon to sleep in while he took a bedroll on the ground nearby. "You really mean to give us shelter with no expectations?" Beatrice asked as he handed her a tin cup of coffee. Jedediah settled onto a fallen log. "My ranch needs help, I won't lie about that. It's hard work and I can't pay much, but if you choose to stay and work, you'll earn your keep fair and square. If you decide to move on, I'll help you get wherever you're going safely." "We don't have anywhere to go," Eleanor said softly, joining them by the fire. "Our parents died of influenza last winter. We sold everything to pay debts and come west. We had an uncle in San Francisco. But he died before we arrived," Clara continued, sitting beside her younger sister. "Then our guide robbed us and sold us to cover his gambling debts." Jedediah's expression darkened. "That's not uncommon out here, I'm afraid. The law's thin and not always on the side of justice." "And what about you, Mr. Grant?" Beatrice asked. "What's your story?" He stared into the fire. "Came west after the war, fought for the Union. Afterward, home didn't feel like home anymore. Worked as a ranch hand, saved my pay, eventually bought my own place 3 years ago." He looked up at her. "Nothing special about my story, just a man trying to make something of himself." But Beatrice sensed there was more pain perhaps, or loss. She didn't press. "We're good workers," she said instead. "I can cook, so keep accounts." "Clara's a fine gardener and knows about medicinal plants. Eleanor's excellent with animals." Jedediah nodded. "Those are all useful skills on a ranch. We'll figure it out as we go." Later, as her sisters slept in the wagon, Beatrice remained awake, watching the stars through a tear in the canvas. For the first time since leaving Boston, she felt a fragile hope. Perhaps this man truly was as decent as he seemed. Perhaps they had finally found a safe harbor in this wild land. The journey to Jedediah's ranch took them through rugged terrain, the wagon jolting over rocky paths and across shallow streams. By midday, the landscape had changed from desert scrub to rolling grassland dotted with oak and pine. As they crested a hill, Jedediah pulled the wagon to a halt. "There it is," he said, pointing to the valley below. "Willow Creek Ranch." Beatrice leaned forward to see. A modest 2-story house of rough-hewn lumber stood near a creek lined with the willow trees that gave the ranch its name. A large barn, corral, and several outbuildings completed the homestead. Fields of what looked like wheat stretched to the east, while cattle grazed on the hillsides to the west. "It's beautiful," Eleanor breathed. "It's smaller than Holloway's spread," Jedediah said, "but it's good land." The creek never runs dry, even in summer. As they approached the house, a tall, lean man emerged from the barn. "That's Isaac Maxwell, my foreman," Jedediah explained. "He and his wife Martha live in the cabin behind the main house. Martha helps with cooking and such. There are 3 other hands who bunk in the bunkhouse: Miguel, Tom, and Charlie." Isaac approached the wagon, curiosity evident on his weathered face. "Didn't expect you back so soon, Jed, and with company no less." Jedediah made the introductions. "The Mercer sisters will be staying with us for a while. They've had a rough journey." Isaac's wife, Martha, soon joined them, a plump, cheerful woman who immediately took charge of getting the sisters settled. "Lord have mercy, you poor things look half-starved. Come inside, I've got stew simmering." The main house was simple but sturdy, with a large kitchen and dining area downstairs, along with Jedediah's study. Upstairs were 4 bedrooms, 1 for Jedediah, and 3 that had stood empty until now. "These were meant for family," he explained awkwardly as Martha showed them upstairs. "Never got around to having one." That evening, after a hearty meal of venison stew and fresh bread, they gathered in the main room. The ranch hands, curious about the newcomers, had joined them for dinner, treating the sisters with a mixture of shy politeness and obvious fascination. "We haven't had proper ladies at Willow Creek since, well, ever," Martha said as she poured coffee. "These boys have forgotten their manners if they ever had them." "We've managed just fine," Tom, the youngest hand, protested. Is that why your socks have holes big enough to catch fish with? Martha retorted, prompting laughter around the table. As the evening progressed, Beatrice found herself watching Jedediah. Unlike the boisterous ranch hands, he was quiet, observing more than participating. Yet there was something compelling about his steady presence, the thoughtful way he listened to others. When the meal was done, he outlined how things would work. You'll have your own rooms and privacy. Martha will show you the routine tomorrow. As for work, we'll find where you fit best. What about pay? Clara asked bluntly. Same as the hands get room, board, and a share of profits after each cattle sale. It's not much cash day to day, but it adds up. That's fair, Beatrice nodded. After the others had dispersed, Jedediah asked Beatrice to join him on the porch. The night was cool, stars brilliant in the clear sky. I want to be honest with you, he said, leaning against the railing. Having you and your sisters here might cause trouble. Because of Holloway, he nodded. He doesn't like being crossed. And he's got most of the county in his pocket, the sheriff included. We're no strangers to trouble, Mr. Grant. Jed, he corrected. Everyone calls me Jed. Jed, she said, testing the name. I'm B to my sisters. A moment of comfortable silence passed between them before he spoke again. What happened to you and your sisters? I'm sorry. The frontier can be cruel to those who aren't prepared for its hardships. We're learning fast, Beatrice replied, and we're together, that's what matters most. Jed studied her face in the moonlight. You're the anchor for them, aren't you? The observation, so accurate and yet unexpected, caught her off guard. I promised our mother, she said simply. He nodded, understanding without needing more explanation. Get some rest, Bea. Tomorrow will be a busy day. And indeed it was. The sisters woke at dawn to the sounds of the ranch coming to life. Martha showed them around, explaining the daily routines and chores. Beatrice took to the kitchen and household management, relieving Martha of some of her duties. Clara, after inspecting the small garden patch behind the house, immediately began planning improvements. Eleanor, true to her love of animals, headed straight for the stables and was soon assisting Miguel with the horses. Days turned into weeks as the Mercer sisters adapted to ranch life. The work was hard but satisfying, and for the first time since leaving Boston, they felt useful and valued. The ranch hands, initially awkward around them, soon came to appreciate the changes the sisters brought to Willow Creek: better meals, mended clothes, and a touch of refinement to their rough existence. Jed remained somewhat of an enigma to Beatrice. He worked alongside his men from sunrise to sunset, then often spent evenings in his study with account books and correspondence. She noticed that he read voraciously. His bookshelves held everything from agricultural journals to poetry, but he spoke little of his past or personal thoughts. One evening, about a month after their arrival, Beatrice was setting fresh bread to rise when Jed entered the kitchen, looking troubled. Is something wrong? She asked, wiping flour from her hands. Holloway's men were asking questions in town about you and your sisters, he said. Isaac just got back with the news. Beatrice's stomach tightened with anxiety. What kind of questions? Where you came from, whether you're staying at Willow Creek permanently, he hesitated. Whether any of you are spoken for, the implication was clear. He still wants us, she said, her voice steady despite her fear. Not if I have anything to say about it, Jed replied, his jaw set. But we should be careful. No one rides out alone for a while. Beatrice nodded. I'll tell my sisters. There's something else, Jed added. The cattle auction's in 2 weeks. We'll all need to go to Fort Yuma. It's the biggest sale of the year, can't afford to miss it. All of us, even my sisters and me. I'd feel better having everyone together where I can keep an eye out. Besides, it might do you all good to have a day in town. Martha can help you find some new dresses, put it on the ranch account. Beatrice was touched by the gesture. That's very generous. It's practical. You can't keep wearing Martha's hand-me-downs forever. A small smile softened his features. And truth be told, the men could use a reminder of what civilized folks look like. They're starting to think your sister Clara's straw hat is the height of fashion. The shared laugh eased the tension, but later that night, Beatrice couldn't sleep. The thought of encountering Holloway again filled her with dread. She slipped from her bed and went downstairs for a glass of water, surprised to find the lamp still burning in Jed's study. She hesitated at the door, then knocked softly. "Come in," he called. She found him at his desk, a ledger open before him, his shirt sleeves rolled up and hair slightly mussed. "You're up late," she observed. "Cattle prices are dropping. I'm trying to figure out how many head we need to sell to cover expenses for the winter." He ran a hand through his hair, leaving it even more disheveled. "Numbers were never my strong suit. May I?" She gestured to the ledger. When he nodded, she came around the desk and leaned over his shoulder, studying the columns of figures. "You've calculated the feed costs wrong here. And you haven't accounted for the new fence in the north pasture." Jed looked at her with surprise. "You understand ranch accounting. I managed my father's household accounts since I was 16. Business is business, whether it's importing textiles or raising cattle." She picked up his pencil and made several corrections. "There, that gives you a clearer picture." He studied her work, then sat back in his chair. "You continue to surprise me, B. Mercer. Is that good or bad? Definitely good. This ranch could use someone with your head for figures." He hesitated. "Would you consider taking over the books? I'd pay extra, of course." "I'd be happy to," she said. "But no extra pay is necessary. You've given my sisters and me a home. That's payment enough." Their eyes met, and something shifted in the air between them, a moment of recognition, perhaps of kindred spirits despite their different backgrounds. "Tell me about Boston," he said suddenly. "What was your life like there?" Surprised by the question, Beatrice settled into the chair opposite his desk. "My father was an importer of fine fabrics. We lived in a brownstone near the common, not extravagantly, but comfortably. My sisters and I had lessons in literature, music, proper etiquette." She smiled at the memory. "It seems like another lifetime now." "Do you miss it?" She considered the question. "I miss the security of knowing what each day would bring, but there was a sameness to life there, especially for women. Our paths were predetermined: advantageous marriage, children, social obligations. And that wasn't what you wanted." "I never gave much thought to what I wanted," she admitted. "I was too busy being what others expected." Jed nodded, understanding in his eyes. "The frontier has its hardships, but it also offers freedom. A chance to define yourself by your actions rather than your circumstances." "Is that why you came west? For freedom?" A shadow crossed his face. "Partly, and partly to outrun ghosts." She waited, sensing he might say more. "I had a brother," he finally continued. "Younger by 2 years. We both fought in the war, but in different regiments. He died at Gettysburg." Jed's voice was matter-of-fact, but Beatrice saw the pain beneath. "Coming home to an empty house afterward, I couldn't stay." "I'm sorry," she said softly. "Loss changes us in ways others can't understand." "Yes, it does." He looked at her with new appreciation. "You understand because you've lost too." "My parents," she nodded, "and our security, our place in the world. Yet here you are, rebuilding. That takes courage." "So does offering sanctuary to 3 strangers when you've already lost so much." The clock in the hall struck midnight, breaking the moment. "It's late," Jed said, closing the ledger. "We should both get some rest." As Beatrice rose to leave, he added, "Thank you for the help with the accounts. And for the conversation." "Anytime," she replied, meaning it more than she'd expected to. The next 2 weeks passed quickly as the ranch prepared for the cattle drive to Fort Yuma. The night before their departure, a thunderstorm rolled in, bringing much-needed rain but also frayed nerves as lightning struck uncomfortably close to the barn. Unable to sleep through the thunder, Beatrice went to check on Alina, who had always been frightened of storms. Finding her sister's room empty, she hurried downstairs, eventually discovering Alina in the barn, soothing the nervous horses. "You'll catch your death out here," Beatrice chided, wrapping her shawl around Alina's shoulders. "The horses were panicking," Alina explained. "I couldn't leave them." Before Beatrice could respond, the barn door opened again and Jed entered, lantern in hand, rain dripping from his hat. "Everything all right? I saw the light from the house." Alina was comforting the horses, Beatrice explained. Jed nodded approvingly. "Good instinct. Spooked horses can hurt themselves." He moved to help Alina calm a particularly agitated mare. "You have a way with them. Ever considered becoming a horse trainer?" Alina's face lit up. "Could I?" "No reason why not. The best horse trainer I ever knew was a woman, Senora Vasquez, over in Santa Fe. I could teach you what I know, maybe arrange for you to learn from her someday." Beatrice watched the interaction with a warm feeling. In their short time at Willow Creek, Jed had shown a knack for recognizing and encouraging each sister's strengths: Clara's gardening, Alina's affinity for animals, and Beatrice's organizational skills. It was a far cry from Boston society, where young women were valued primarily for their marriageability. The storm passed by morning, leaving behind mud that delayed their departure for Fort Yuma by half a day. Finally, with the cattle moving ahead guided by Isaac and two of the hands, the rest of them followed in two wagons, Jed driving one with Beatrice beside him, Martha driving the other with Clara and Alina. "Nervous about returning to town?" Jed asked as they traveled. "A bit," Beatrice admitted. "It's where our troubles began, after all. It's also where they turned around," he pointed out. "Sometimes you have to revisit the past to appreciate how far you've come." She smiled at his philosophy. "When did you become so wise, Jedediah Grant?" "About 10 seconds ago," he laughed. "I've been saving that line for something." Their easy conversation continued throughout the journey, and Beatrice realized how comfortable she'd become in his presence. There was something steadying about Jed, a reliability that made her feel secure despite the uncertainties ahead. Fort Yuma had grown since they'd last seen it, the cattle auction bringing an influx of ranchers, traders, and the various opportunists who followed such gatherings. The main street bustled with activity as they arrived, the air thick with dust and anticipation. "We'll stay at the Frontier Hotel," Jed told them, pointing to a 2-story building at the end of the street. "It's respectable enough. Martha will stay with you while Isaac, the boys, and I handle the cattle." As promised, Martha took the sisters shopping for new dresses while the men went to the auction yards. The general store offered a modest selection of ready-made garments and fabrics, nothing like the shops of Boston, but a welcome change from their worn clothing. "Oh my," Martha exclaimed when Beatrice emerged from behind the fitting screen in a blue calico dress that complimented her eyes. "Jed won't know what hit him when he sees you in that." Beatrice felt her cheeks warm. "I doubt Mr. Grant will notice what any of us are wearing." Martha gave her a knowing look. "That man notices everything about you, dear. He just pretends not to." Before Beatrice could respond, the storekeeper's wife approached with a bolt of green fabric. "This would suit your coloring beautifully, Miss Mercer. I could have a dress made up in 2 days." "We're leaving tomorrow," Beatrice replied. "But thank you, shame. We don't get many fine ladies like yourself in Fort Yuma." The woman lowered her voice. "Especially not ones who aren't spoken for. You'll want to be careful. Word gets around fast." The warning heightened Beatrice's awareness of eyes following them as they completed their shopping and headed back to the hotel. She was relieved when Jed and his men joined them for supper in the hotel dining room, their presence a buffer against the curious stares. "How did the auction go?" Clara asked as they ate. "Better than expected," Jed replied. "Prices were higher than last month. We sold 30 head, enough to see us through winter with something left over." "That calls for a celebration," Martha declared. "I hear there's a dance at the town hall tonight." Jed looked uncomfortable. "I'm not much for dancing." "Nonsense," Martha insisted. "Everyone needs a bit of merriment now and then. Besides, these girls haven't had any fun since they arrived. It would do them good." Put that way, Jed could hardly refuse. After supper, they returned to their rooms to prepare. Martha had insisted on buying ribbon and lace trimmings to dress up their new gowns, and the sisters helped each other arrange their hair. "You look beautiful," Alina told Beatrice as she pinned the last strand of her elder sister's dark hair into place. "Like when we used to go to the assemblies in Boston." Beatrice studied her reflection in the small mirror. The blue dress was simple, but with the lace collar Martha had added and her hair arranged more formally than usual, she did look more like her former self. Yet she didn't feel like that person anymore, the dutiful daughter concerned with propriety and appearances. The woman looking back at her had weathered hardship and found strength she hadn't known she possessed. The town hall was already crowded when they arrived, lanterns casting a warm glow over the proceedings. A small band played lively tunes in the corner while couples whirled across the floor. The sisters drew immediate attention. Unmarried young women were still a rarity in the territory. "Stick together," Jed murmured as they entered, "and stay where I can see you." It was unnecessary advice, as they were quickly surrounded by would-be dance partners. Clara and Alina, delighted by the attention, accepted offers to dance from some of the more presentable young men. Beatrice was more selective, politely declining several invitations before agreeing to a reel with the young doctor who'd recently set up practice in town. As she moved through the steps of the dance, she was aware of Jed watching from across the room, his expression unreadable. When the music ended, she made her way back to him. "You're not enjoying yourself," she observed. "I'm more comfortable with cattle than cotillions," he admitted. "Then why did you agree to come?" "Because Martha was right, you and your sisters deserve some enjoyment." He hesitated. "And to show everyone that you're under the protection of Willow Creek Ranch." Before she could respond, the band struck up a waltz. To her surprise, Jed held out his hand. "Would you do me the honor, Miss Mercer? I thought you didn't dance." A slight smile curved his lips. "I said I wasn't much for it, not that I couldn't do it." As he led her onto the floor, Beatrice was pleasantly surprised by his competence. "Where did a ranch owner learn to waltz?" she asked as they moved among the other couples. "My mother insisted my brother and I learn, said we never knew when we might need to impress a lady." His hand was warm and steady at her waist. "I never thought I'd have cause to thank her for those lessons." "And are you trying to impress me, Mr. Grant?" The question slipped out before she could reconsider its boldness. His blue eyes held hers. "Would it work if I were?" The honest question, without pretense or artifice, touched her more than any practiced flattery could have. "Perhaps," she answered, equally honest. Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition of possibility that neither had acknowledged before. As they continued to dance, Beatrice was acutely aware of the strength in his hand holding hers, the respectful distance he maintained even as the dance brought them close. The spell was broken when the music ended, and a commotion erupted near the entrance. Victor Holloway had arrived with several of his men, all of them already showing signs of having visited the saloon first. "Keep dancing," Jed said quietly, guiding Beatrice smoothly into the next dance without returning to the edge of the floor. "I'd rather not draw his attention." But it was too late. Holloway's eyes swept the room and fixed on them, narrowing with recognition. He made his way through the crowd, interrupting their dance with deliberate rudeness. "Well, if it isn't Grant and his purchased bride," Holloway said loudly, alcohol slurring his words slightly. "Or is she just one of your servants? Hard to tell when a man buys women in bulk." Several nearby dancers stopped to watch the confrontation. Beatrice felt Jed tense beside her. "Miss Mercer is a respected employee of Willow Creek Ranch," Jed replied evenly. "And you're interrupting our dance, Holloway." "Am I now? My apologies." Holloway made an exaggerated bow. "Perhaps the lady would prefer a partner whose ranch doesn't require constant scrabbling just to stay afloat." "I'm quite satisfied with my current partner," Beatrice said coolly. "If you'll excuse us." Holloway's face darkened. "You've got spirit, I like that. I offered $1,500 for you and your sisters, you know. Could have given you a much finer life than what Grant's offering." "The life I have is of my own choosing," she replied. "Now if you'll," Holloway grabbed her arm. "Let me make you a better offer. Leave Grant's failing operation and come work at my ranch. I'll double whatever he's paying you." "Take your hand off her." Jed's voice was dangerously quiet. Holloway's grin turned nasty. "Or what? You'll challenge me." "With what army, Grant?" "He won't need an army." The new voice belonged to Isaac, who had appeared at Jed's shoulder. Behind him stood Miguel, Tom, and Charlie, their stances making it clear they stood with their boss. Holloway's men moved closer, hands hovering near their weapons. The music had stopped entirely now, the other dancers moving hastily out of the potential line of fire. The tension was broken by the arrival of the sheriff, a stocky man with a graying mustache. "Everything all right here?" he asked, though his gaze rested primarily on Jed rather than Holloway. "Just a misunderstanding about dance partners," Holloway said smoothly, releasing Beatrice's arm. "No harm done." "Then perhaps you gentlemen should continue this discussion outside," the sheriff suggested, "or better yet, not at all." After a tense moment, Holloway stepped back. "Another time then." He looked directly at Beatrice. "Think about my offer, Miss Mercer. It stands for all three of you." As he strode away, Jed turned to Beatrice. "Are you all right? I'm fine," she assured him, though her heart was racing. "But I think our evening of merriment is over." They gathered Clara and Alina, who had watched the confrontation with wide eyes, and made their way back to the hotel. Martha fussed over them, insisting they all have a cup of tea to settle their nerves before retiring. Once the others had gone to bed, Beatrice found Jed on the hotel's small balcony staring out at the now quiet street. "You should get some rest," he said without turning. "We leave early tomorrow. So should you." She moved to stand beside him. "Holloway's threat wasn't idle, was it?" "No. He's a dangerous man when crossed. Because you outbid him at the auction," Jed sighed. "That and other matters that go back further. Our ranches share a water boundary. He's been trying to push me off my land since I bought it. And now he's using my sisters and me to provoke you." "I'm sorry you've been drawn into my problems," Jed said. "Perhaps bringing you to Fort Yuma was a mistake. Or perhaps it was necessary to understand what we're facing." She placed her hand on his arm. "My sisters and I are stronger than we appear, Jed. We've survived worse than Victor Holloway." He covered her hand with his own, the touch sending warmth through her despite the cool night air. "You are remarkable, Beatrice Mercer. I knew it the moment I saw you standing on that auction block, chin high despite everything." Their eyes met, and for a breathless moment, Beatrice thought he might kiss her. Instead, he gently squeezed her hand and stepped back. "Dawn comes early," he said. "Good night, Bea." "Good night, Jed," she replied, trying to ignore the disappointment that coursed through her. The return journey to Willow Creek was uneventful, but a new awareness hummed between Beatrice and Jed, unspoken yet unmistakable. They worked together as before, discussing ranch matters and sharing meals with the others, but something had changed since the dance. A week after their return, Clara approached Beatrice as she hung laundry in the yard. "Something's different between you and Jed," her sister observed. "Have you finally admitted you have feelings for him?" "What? Don't be ridiculous," Beatrice protested, though she could feel her cheeks warming. "Oh, please, Bea, we've all seen how you look at each other when you think no one's watching. We work together, that's all," Clara snorted. "If you say so. But take it from someone who's watching from the outside, that man is in love with you, and unless I'm very much mistaken, you feel the same." Before Beatrice could formulate a denial, a rider appeared on the road leading to the ranch, one of Holloway's men, recognizable by the distinctive brand on his horse's hip. He carried a letter which he delivered to Jed, who read it with a deepening frown before dismissing the messenger. "What is it?" Beatrice asked when Jed called everyone together in the main room. "Holloway's throwing a harvest celebration next Saturday," Jed explained. "He's invited all the neighboring ranches, including Willow Creek. He passed the invitation to Isaac. Says it's to promote friendly relations among area ranchers." "Friendly, my foot," Martha scoffed. "That man wouldn't know friendship if it bit him on the nose." "Why invite us if he's trying to run you off your land?" Alina asked. "To appear magnanimous to the others," Isaac suggested. "Makes him look like the reasonable one if you refuse. Or to get another look at the Mercer sisters," Clara added. "He made his interest clear enough at the dance." Jed's jaw tightened. "No one has to attend who doesn't wish to. But there might be value in showing our faces, maintaining civil relations with our neighbors." "I'll go," Beatrice decided. "Clara and Alina can choose for themselves." Both her sisters quickly agreed to accompany her, ignoring her concerned look. "We're not letting you face Holloway alone," Clara declared. "Besides, I want to see this grand ranch he's so proud of. If we go together," Jed said firmly, "and we leave together." The day of the gathering arrived with clear skies and mild temperatures, perfect weather for an outdoor celebration. Holloway's ranch, Diamond H, was indeed impressive, a sprawling main house built of stone and timber, expansive stables, bunkhouses, and barns, all arranged around a large courtyard where tables had been set up for the feast. At least 50 people had gathered by the time the Willow Creek party arrived, ranchers and their families from across the county. Holloway greeted them with exaggerated courtesy. "Grant, glad you could make it." He shook Jed's hand with false heartiness before turning to the sisters. "And the lovely Mercer sisters, you brighten my humble gathering with your presence." "Your hospitality is appreciated," Beatrice replied diplomatically. Allow me to give you the grand tour, Holloway offered, gesturing toward the main house. Perhaps later, Jed intervened smoothly. I see Sheriff Davis over there. There's a matter I've been meaning to discuss with him. As they moved through the crowd, Beatrice noted the curious glances directed their way. Everyone's watching us, she murmured. You three are still the talk of the territory, Jed replied. The Boston ladies rescued from an auction block by a bachelor rancher. It's the most exciting gossip they've had in years. Rescued, not purchased, she corrected. Though I'm not sure everyone sees the distinction. I do, he said simply. That's what matters. The afternoon progressed pleasantly enough, with good food, music, and conversation with the neighboring ranchers and their families. Beatrice found herself enjoying the opportunity to meet other women settled in the territory, most of them wives who had followed their husbands west. But a few who, like her and her sisters, had come seeking a fresh start. As the sun began to set, lanterns were lit around the courtyard and the musicians struck up livelier tunes for dancing. Holloway approached their table, extending his hand to Beatrice. Would you honor me with a dance, Miss Mercer? She hesitated, looking to Jed, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. To refuse would create a scene. One dance, she agreed, allowing Holloway to lead her to the cleared area serving as a dance floor. As they moved through the steps of a country reel, Holloway kept their conversation surprisingly civil. You look well, he observed. Ranch life seems to agree with you. It does, she replied cautiously. Willow Creek has become home to my sisters and me. Admirable loyalty. But I wonder if you've truly considered all your options. He spun her according to the dance. Grant's a decent enough fellow, but his operation is small. One bad season, one cattle disease, and he's finished. We all face risks in this territory, true. But some are better positioned to weather them than others. He gestured to the festivities around them. Diamond H spans 10,000 acres. I employ 30 men. I have connections with buyers as far east as Chicago. Are you attempting to recruit me away from Willow Creek, Mr. Holloway? He smiled, revealing two perfect teeth. I'm offering you a choice, Miss Mercer. You're a woman of intelligence and education wasted as a housekeeper on a struggling ranch. I need someone to manage my accounts, correspond with Eastern investors. The position would come with a substantial salary, private quarters for you and your sisters, and my personal guarantee of respectful treatment. A generous offer, she acknowledged, but my answer is the same as before. My sisters and I are content at Willow Creek. His smile didn't falter, but his eyes hardened. Because of Grant. Because we value loyalty over luxury, Mr. Holloway. Loyalty, he repeated. A fine quality, I admire it, truly, but I wonder if Grant's loyalty to you is equally steadfast. Something in his tone made her wary. What do you mean? Only that men in precarious financial positions sometimes make difficult choices. As the dance ended, he bowed over her hand. Think about my offer, Miss Mercer. It remains open. Troubled by the conversation, Beatrice returned to her table, where Clara was regaling Jed with stories of their Boston social mishaps. Everything all right? Jed asked quietly as she sat beside him. Fine, she replied, though her smile felt forced. Mr. Holloway was just being hospitable. The celebration continued as stars appeared in the darkening sky. Couples danced, children played games of tag between the tables, and the men gathered in groups to discuss cattle prices and weather predictions. Beatrice was returning from helping Alina, who had torn the hem of her dress, when she overheard voices from behind the nearby barn. She wouldn't have paused except that one of the voices mentioned Jed's name. Grant's been stubborn, but he won't hold out much longer, Holloway was saying. That loan comes due next month, and the bank's already agreed to sell the note to me when he defaults. What about those women he took in? Asked another voice, the sheriff. Beatrice realized with a chill. The sisters. They'll see reason once Grant's property becomes part of Diamond H. Women are practical creatures, they go where security lies. Beatrice's heart raced as the implication became clear. Jed was in financial trouble Holloway was exploiting. She slipped away before they could spot her, mind whirling with questions. Why hadn't Jed mentioned a loan? Was Willow Creek truly in danger? And why did the thought of losing the ranch fill her with such dread? Because it's home, she realized. In the few months since arriving, Willow Creek had become more of a home than their Boston house had been after their parents died. And Clara was right. Somewhere along the way, working beside him, sharing meals and conversations, learning his strengths and vulnerabilities, Beatrice had fallen in love with Jedediah Grant. The revelation left her breathless. What should she do with this knowledge? Confront Jed about the loan, tell him how she felt. The questions tumbled through her mind as she made her way back to the gathering. Her distraction must have shown on her face, for when she rejoined the group, Jed immediately asked if something was wrong. "I'm just tired," she replied, not ready to share what she'd overheard. "Perhaps we should think about heading back soon." He nodded, clearly sensing there was more but not pressing the issue in public. "I'll round up the others." As they prepared to leave, Holloway approached once more, his earlier civility now enhanced by the whiskey he'd been drinking. "Leaving so soon, Grant. The night's still young. It's a long ride back," Jed replied. "Thank you for your hospitality." Holloway's gaze shifted to Beatrice. "Did you consider my offer, Miss Mercer?" "I have," she said carefully, "and while I appreciate it, my answer remains the same." Something dangerous flashed in Holloway's eyes before his smile returned. "As you wish. The invitation stands for all of you." He looked back at Jed. "Good luck with that loan payment, Grant. I hear the bank's getting impatient." Jed's expression remained neutral, but Beatrice saw his hands clench briefly at his sides. "Good night, Holloway." The ride back to Willow Creek was largely silent, each lost in their own thoughts. When they arrived, Clara and Alina headed straight to bed, exhausted from the day's events. Martha and Isaac retired to their cabin, leaving Beatrice and Jed alone in the main house. "There's something you're not telling me," she said as he stoked the fire in the main room. "Something about the ranch's finances." He straightened, firelight casting shadows across his face. "What did Holloway say to you?" "It's what he said to the sheriff when they didn't know I was listening." She explained what she'd overheard. "Is it true? Is there a loan coming due?" Jed sighed, sinking into a chair. "Yes, I took out a loan last year after the drought killed half my herd. Payments due next month and I'm short." "How short?" $2,000. Beatrice's heart sank. It was a substantial sum. "Why didn't you tell me? I've been managing the books for months." "Because it's my responsibility, my problem to solve." He ran a hand through his hair. "I didn't want you and your sisters worrying. We're not just employees, Jed. She hesitated, unsure how to define what they had become to each other. "Family," he suggested, his voice gentle. "Yes," she admitted. "At least that's how it feels to me." He looked at her for a long moment. "To me as well." The confession hung in the air between them, weighted with unspoken meaning. "Then let me help," she said. "There must be a solution. I've tried everything I can think of, sold as many cattle as I could spare, cut expenses to the bone. I've written to everyone I know who might lend the money, but..." He shook his head. "Holloway's made sure word has spread that Willow Creek is a bad investment. What happens if you can't pay? The bank forecloses. Holloway buys the note and the property." His jaw tightened. "He's been trying to get this land since before I owned it. The creek that runs through it is the real prize. Water rights in this territory are worth more than gold." Beatrice paced the room, mind racing. "There must be something of value we could sell." "The silver tea service in the dining cabinet. It was my mother's," Jed said. "And it wouldn't fetch more than $50 anyway." "What about a partner, someone who could invest in the ranch? I've approached every rancher in the county who might be interested." "No one wants to cross Holloway by helping me." She stopped pacing, struck by an idea. "What about someone from outside the county? My father had business associates in San Francisco. I still have letters of introduction to some of them." "San Francisco is a week's ride," Jed pointed out. "The payment's due in 3 weeks. Then one of us should leave immediately." She met his gaze. "I can go. I have the connections, the background to approach investors." "Absolutely not," he said firmly. "It's too dangerous for you to travel alone." "Then come with me. Isaac and the hands can manage the ranch for 2 weeks." Jed considered the suggestion, clearly torn between the slim hope it offered and the risk of leaving the ranch unattended for so long. "It might work," he finally acknowledged. "But what would you tell your sisters? The truth. They deserve to know." She approached his chair, courage bolstered by the night's revelations. Jed, I need to ask you something. He looked up at her, waiting. If we succeed, if we find the money to save Willow Creek, what happens next, for all of us? What do you want to happen? He asked softly. I want us to stay, not as employees, but as… She took a deep breath. As family, real family. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Beatrice, Mercer, are you proposing to me? Despite the seriousness of their situation, she found herself smiling. I suppose I am. Highly improper of me. He stood, closing the distance between them. I've never been one for propriety. His hands gently framed her face. I've been half in love with you since I saw you standing on that auction block, looking like a queen despite your circumstances. And fully in love with you since the day I found you correcting my account books. Joy washed through her, bright and unexpected. Is that a yes? It's a yes, he murmured, lowering his lips to hers in a kiss that spoke of promises and possibilities. When they parted, he kept her close, his forehead resting against hers. But I can't ask you to bind your future to mine when everything I've built might be lost in 3 weeks. You're not asking, I'm offering. She stepped back, taking his hands in hers. Let's go to San Francisco. Together, we'll find a way to save Willow Creek. The next morning, they shared their plans with the others. Clara and Alina were initially alarmed by the news of the loan but quickly rallied behind the idea of seeking investors in San Francisco. I still have Mother's pearl necklace, Alina offered. We could sell it. And I have Father's gold pocket watch, added Clara. Beatrice was touched by their willingness to sacrifice their few remaining possessions from their previous life. We'll keep those as a last resort, she promised. Isaac and Martha insisted they could manage the ranch during their absence, with Isaac adding grimly, I'll have the hands keep armed watch. Holloway might try something when he hears you've gone. They departed 2 days later, traveling light and fast on horseback rather than by wagon to save time. The journey to San Francisco would take them across harsh terrain, desert, mountains, and finally the coastal range before reaching the bustling port city. The first few days passed uneventfully as they rode west, camping under the stars and falling into an easy rhythm together. Away from the ranch and its responsibilities, Beatrice discovered new sides to Jed: his dry humor, his knowledge of the natural world, the quiet contentment he found in simple moments. On the 4th night, as they sat beside their campfire in a small valley sheltered by towering pines, Jed pulled a small package from his saddlebag. I've been carrying this since Fort Yuma, he said, handing it to her. Seems like the right time to give it to you. Curious, Beatrice unwrapped the paper to find a small wooden box. Inside lay a silver ring set with a modest sapphire. It was my mother's, Jed explained. I've kept it all these years, thinking I might never have cause to give it to anyone. He took her hand. It would honor her memory to see it on your finger if you'll have it. It's beautiful, she whispered, blinking back tears as he slipped it onto her finger. And yes, I'll have it, and you. Their kiss was deeper this time, unhurried and filled with promise. When they finally drew apart, both were breathless. When we return to Willow Creek, he said, whatever the outcome with the loan, will you marry me right away? Yes, she answered without hesitation. Though my sisters will insist on at least some semblance of a proper wedding, he smiled. Whatever makes you happy makes me happy. The remainder of the journey passed in a blur of long rides, brief rests, and shared hopes for the future. They reached San Francisco on the 10th day, tired and dusty but determined. The city was a shock after the quiet of the ranch, crowded, noisy, and expanding in every direction as the gold rush and growing trade with the Far East brought prosperity and people. They found modest lodgings near the financial district, where Beatrice's father's former associates had their offices. The next 3 days were a whirlwind of meetings arranged through Beatrice's letters of introduction. They met with bankers, merchants, and shipping magnates, anyone who might be interested in investing in a cattle ranch with reliable water rights. Some dismissed them outright. Others showed interest but balked at the tight time frame. By the end of the 3rd day, they had several potential leads but no firm commitments. We need to try a different approach, Beatrice said as they returned to their lodgings that evening. These men see numbers and risks. They can't envision what Willow Creek truly is. What do you suggest? There's a society gathering tomorrow night at the home of Mr. Lawrence, one of Father's closest associates. He's invited us to attend. She paced their small sitting room. Instead of presenting Willow Creek as a business proposition, we'll tell our story, your vision for the ranch, how you saved my sisters and me, how we've built something meaningful together. Jed looked skeptical. Society gatherings aren't exactly my natural habitat. Nor mine anymore, she admitted. But these people respond to stories, to personal connections, and our story is rather remarkable, don't you think? He considered her point, then nodded slowly. It's worth trying. The gathering at the Lawrence mansion was everything Beatrice remembered from her Boston days: elegant, formal, and governed by unspoken rules of etiquette. She wore her best dress, hastily altered by a local seamstress, while Jed had reluctantly purchased a new suit for the occasion. I feel like I'm wearing someone else's skin, he muttered as they entered the grand home. You look very handsome, she assured him, adjusting his tie. Just follow my lead and remember these people value success, romance, and a good investment opportunity in that order. Mr. Lawrence greeted them warmly, genuinely pleased to see the daughter of his old friend. Your father would be proud of your resourcefulness, my dear, he told Beatrice after she explained their situation. Allow me to introduce you to some people who might be interested in your venture. Throughout the evening, they shared their story with dozens of guests: how Jed had built Willow Creek from nothing, how he'd rescued the sisters from the auction block, how they'd created a thriving, if modest, enterprise against all odds. Beatrice noted with satisfaction the reactions they received, particularly from the women, who were clearly charmed by the romantic elements of their tale. It's like something from a novel, declared Mrs. Harrington, the wife of a prominent banker. 3 sisters saved by a handsome rancher, finding love and purpose in the wilderness. William, you simply must help them. Her husband looked less enthused but thoughtful. The water rights alone make it a reasonable investment, he mused, and cattle prices are rising again back east. By the end of the evening, they had 3 serious expressions of interest, including one from Mr. Harrington, who proposed purchasing a 20% stake in the ranch for $3,000. Enough to pay the loan with something left for improvements, Jed said as they walked back to their lodgings, the night air cool against their flushed faces. And he doesn't want active involvement in management, Beatrice added, just quarterly reports and a share of profits. You were brilliant tonight, Jed told her, taking her hand as they walked. The way you spoke about the ranch, about our future, I saw it all through your eyes. I simply told the truth, she replied. That Willow Creek is worth fighting for. The next 2 days were consumed with finalizing the arrangement with Harrington. Papers were drawn up, terms negotiated, and finally, funds transferred to an account they could access when they returned to Fort Yuma. We did it, Beatrice said with wonder as they left the bank with the documentation in hand. Willow Creek is saved. Their return journey was filled with plans and possibilities. With the additional capital, they could expand their herd, repair the northern pasture fencing, and perhaps even hire another hand or 2. And a proper wedding, Jed added as they made camp on their final night before reaching Willow Creek. Your sisters deserve to see you married with all the trimmings. Nothing too elaborate, she protested. But yes, something special to mark the occasion. They were a day's ride from home when they spotted the smoke, a dark column rising from the direction of Willow Creek. That's not a cook fire, Jed said grimly, spurring his horse forward. They rode hard, fear tightening around Beatrice's heart as they crested the final hill and saw the ranch below. The barn was ablaze, flames reaching high into the afternoon sky. Figures moved frantically around it, forming a bucket line from the creek. Clara, Eleanor, Beatrice cried as they galloped down the hill. Isaac saw them first, his soot-stained face showing relief. Thank God you're back, my sisters, Beatrice asked desperately, sliding from her horse. They're safe, Martha assured her, appearing from the direction of the house. Everyone's safe. What happened? Jed demanded, already moving to join the bucket line. Holloway's men, Isaac spat. 4 of them rode in just after dawn. Said they were just passing through, asked for water for their horses. Next thing we knew, the barn was on fire and they were riding off. "We've saved most of the horses and equipment," Tom called from the line, "but the barn's gone." Beatrice found her sisters helping Martha tend to Miguel, who had burned his hands trying to free the last of the horses. Eleanor cried, running to embrace her. "You're back. Are you hurt?" Beatrice asked, checking them both for injuries. "We're fine," Clara assured her. "Just scared and angry. Did you find the money? Can we stop Holloway?" "We did," Beatrice confirmed. "But this," she gestured to the burning barn, "this is too far. He can't get away with arson." "He will unless we can prove it was his men," Martha said grimly. "The sheriff won't cross him without solid evidence." By evening, the fire was out, leaving the charred skeleton of the barn smoking against the darkening sky. The hands had managed to save all but 2 horses and most of the essential equipment, but the structure itself was a total loss. Gathered in the main house for a summer meal, they took stock of their situation. "The money from Harrington will cover the loan payment," Jed explained to the others, "but rebuilding the barn will take most of what's left." "Can we prove Holloway was behind this?" Eleanor asked. Isaac shook his head. "His men were careful, didn't make threats, didn't leave anything behind. It's our word against theirs." "Then we rebuild," Jed decided, "and we'll be ready next time they try something." "There shouldn't be a next time," Beatrice said firmly. "We need to end this feud before someone gets hurt or worse." "How?" Clara demanded. "Holloway won't stop until he gets what he wants." "Then perhaps we need to change what he wants," Beatrice replied. An idea had been forming in her mind since they'd ridden in to find the barn ablaze. "Jed, does Holloway's ranch have easy access to the rail lines?" "No," Jed answered, puzzled by the question. "That's one advantage we have over him. The new spur line to Fort Yuma passes just 3 miles from our southern boundary." "Exactly," Beatrice said. Mr. Harrington mentioned that one reason he was interested in investing was the potential to ship cattle directly to eastern markets once the line is complete. "What if we proposed a business arrangement to Holloway access to the rail spur in exchange for peace?" Jed considered the idea. "It might work. Holloway's a businessman before anything else, if he sees profit in cooperation rather than driving us out." "It's worth trying," Isaac agreed. "Better than waiting for the next attack." They spent the evening drafting a letter to Holloway, proposing a meeting on neutral ground to discuss a mutually beneficial arrangement. Jed sent one of the hands to deliver it the next morning, while the rest of them began clearing the debris from the barn site. 2 days later, a response arrived. Holloway agreed to meet at the Fort Yuma Hotel the following Saturday. "I don't trust him," Clara said bluntly when Jed shared the news. "This could be a trap." "Maybe," Jed acknowledged, "but it's also our best chance to end this peacefully." "I'm coming with you," Beatrice declared. "Absolutely not," Jed began, but she cut him off. "I helped negotiate the deal with Harrington. I understand the financial aspects better than anyone here." And, she added, her voice softening, "We're partners now in every sense. Where you go, I go." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Partners," he agreed. They arrived in Fort Yuma early on Saturday, allowing time to deposit Harrington's bank draft and complete the loan payment before the meeting with Holloway. The weight that lifted from Jed's shoulders when the bank manager confirmed the loan was satisfied was visible in his stance, in the new lightness in his eyes. "That's one battle won," Beatrice said as they left the bank. "Now for the war." Holloway was waiting in the hotel dining room, drinking whiskey despite the early hour. 2 of his men loitered nearby, maintaining a watchful presence. "Grant," he greeted them with false joviality, "and the lovely Miss Mercer, please join me." They sat across from him, Beatrice noting the way his gaze lingered on the sapphire ring now adorning her finger. "I see congratulations are in order," Holloway remarked, raising his glass. "Moving rather quickly, aren't you, Grant? Or perhaps there's a reason for the rush." "Our personal arrangements aren't the subject of this meeting," Jed replied evenly. "We're here to discuss business. Indeed we are, though I must say I'm curious about how you managed to pay that loan. When I spoke to the bank manager last week, he was quite certain you'd default." "We secured an investor," Beatrice explained. "Mr. William Harrington of San Francisco has purchased a minority stake in Willow Creek Ranch." Surprise flickered across Holloway's face before his mask of indifference returned. "Harrington, you say? The banker?" Interesting choice of partners. A mutually beneficial arrangement, Jed said, which brings us to why we asked for this meeting. He outlined their proposal, a formal agreement allowing Holloway's cattle access to the rail spur through Willow Creek land in exchange for a small per-head fee and a cessation of hostilities. Holloway listened without interrupting, swirling the whiskey in his glass. When Jed finished, he leaned back in his chair, studying them both. A clever proposal, he finally said, but it assumes I was behind the unfortunate fire at your barn, an accusation for which you have no proof. We're not here to assign blame for past events, Beatrice said diplomatically. We're looking toward the future. This arrangement would benefit both ranches considerably. Perhaps, Holloway conceded, but why should I pay for access I could simply take? Your ranch hands can't patrol every mile of boundary. Because open conflict costs more than cooperation, she replied. In money, in reputation, and potentially in blood. Is that really how you want to conduct business, Mr. Holloway, through intimidation and violence? He studied her with new respect. You're not what I expected, Miss Mercer. There's steel beneath those proper Boston manners. I've learned that survival in this territory requires adaptability, she said. Something you understand as well, I think. A slow smile spread across his face. You would have made a formidable addition to Diamond H. She's made Willow Creek stronger instead, Jed said, a hint of pride in his voice. The question is, are you interested in our proposal, or should we look elsewhere for partners? Holloway raised an eyebrow. Elsewhere. The Alvarez Ranch to the east has expressed interest in a similar arrangement, Beatrice improvised smoothly. But we thought to offer it to you first, given our history. It was a bluff, but one delivered with such confidence that doubt flickered across Holloway's face. After a moment's consideration, he nodded. Draw up the papers, I'll have my lawyer review them. If the terms are fair, you'll have your agreement. Relief washed through Beatrice, though she was careful not to show it. Excellent. We'll have the documents prepared by the end of next week. As they rose to leave, Holloway held up a hand. One more thing. That fire, regrettable business. Reckless men sometimes take initiative without proper authorization. His gaze was steady. It won't happen again. It was as close to an admission and an apology as they were likely to get. Jed nodded once, accepting the implicit truce. Good day, Holloway. Outside the hotel, Beatrice released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Do you think he'll honor it? I think he's a pragmatic man, Jed replied, and you gave him a pragmatic reason to leave us in peace. He squeezed her hand. That was some quick thinking about the Alvarez Ranch, she smiled. I've learned a few things about negotiation from watching you. From me, I'm not the one who charmed $3,000 out of a San Francisco banker. They shared a laugh as they walked to the wagon, the weight of the past weeks finally lifting. The next month was a whirlwind of activity at Willow Creek. With the loan paid and the agreement with Holloway signed and filed with the county clerk, they turned their attention to rebuilding the barn bigger and better than before, with help from neighboring ranchers who supplied additional labor. Amid the construction, wedding preparations were underway. Clara and Alina threw themselves into planning, with Martha's enthusiastic assistance. The ceremony would be simple but special, held on the grassy area beside the creek where wildflowers bloomed in abundance. 2 days before the wedding, Clara discovered Beatrice in her room, staring at her mother's portrait that had somehow survived their journey west. Having second thoughts, Clara asked, sitting beside her on the bed. Not about Jed, Beatrice assured her. Never about him. I just wish Mother and Father could be here. They are, in a way. Clara touched the portrait gently. And I think they'd be proud of us, of how we've survived, of the home we've made here, even though it's so different from what they imagined for us. Especially because of that, Clara insisted. Remember how Father always said life's greatest adventures come from the unexpected turns in the road? She smiled at her older sister. I'd say an auction block in Fort Yuma counts as a rather unexpected turn. Beatrice laughed, wiping away tears. Indeed it does. The wedding day dawned clear and perfect, the October air crisp but not cold. The entire community had gathered, neighboring ranchers, townspeople from Fort Yuma, even a few of the investors they'd met in San Francisco, who'd made the journey to witness the union they'd helped make possible. Standing beneath an arch of willow branches and wildflowers, with Clara and Alina beside her, Beatrice watched Jed approach with Isaac as his best man. He'd never looked more handsome, nor more certain, than he did in that moment. The circuit preacher, who visited the area monthly, performed a simple ceremony. When it came time for the vows, Jed took Beatrice's hands in his. "I never expected to find you," he said, his voice steady and true. "Standing on an auction block in Fort Yuma was the last place I thought I'd meet the woman who would change my life. But from that moment, seeing your courage, your determination to protect your sisters, I knew you were someone extraordinary." He squeezed her hands gently. "I promise to honor that courage every day, to be your partner in all things, to build a life and a legacy with you that would make your parents proud, and to love you, Beatrice Mercer, until my last breath." Tears shimmered in Beatrice's eyes as she spoke her own vows. "When you said your ranch had room for all of us, you offered more than shelter, you offered hope when we had none. You saw our worth when others saw only our circumstances." She smiled through her tears. "I promise to stand beside you through whatever comes. To be your partner, your confidante, your strength when you need it. To help build Willow Creek into the home and legacy we both envision. And to love you, Jedediah Grant, completely and without reservation, for all the days of our life together." As the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, cheers erupted from the assembled guests. Clara and Alina embraced them both, their joy evident in their tear-streaked faces. The celebration continued into the evening, with tables set up around the yard, lanterns glowing as darkness fell, and music provided by a fiddler from town. Jed and Beatrice moved among their guests, accepting congratulations and well wishes. To everyone's surprise, Victor Holloway arrived late in the afternoon, a wrapped package in hand. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said, approaching the newlyweds. "I wanted to offer my congratulations and a peace offering of sorts." He presented the package to Beatrice, who unwrapped it to find a leather-bound book of agricultural innovations from Europe. "For the forward-thinking ranch manager," Holloway said with a hint of his old arrogance. "I've found some of the techniques quite useful." "Thank you," Jed said, genuine appreciation in his voice. "This is thoughtful." "Yes, well," Holloway cleared his throat. "I may have been overzealous in my business methods. The territory is changing. Perhaps it's time my approaches changed as well." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was a significant olive branch. "You're welcome to stay for the celebration," Beatrice offered. Holloway shook his head. "Another time, perhaps. I have business in town." He tipped his hat. "Mrs. Grant." As he walked away, Jed turned to Beatrice with raised eyebrows. "Mrs. Grant, that's the first time I've heard it. Do you like the sound of it?" she asked, slipping her arm through his. "Almost as much as I like the woman who bears it," he replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. As night fell and the celebration continued around them, they slipped away to the creek bank, finding a moment of solitude. "Are you happy, Mrs. Grant?" Jed asked, drawing her close. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," she replied honestly. "And you?" "I have everything I never knew I wanted." He looked toward the gathering, where Clara was teaching some of the ranch hands a Boston dance while Alina laughed with Martha and Isaac. "A home, a family, a purpose, and a partner to share it all with." Beatrice followed his gaze, her heart full. "When I think of how close we came to a different fate in Fort Yuma, I believe we would have found each other somehow," Jed said with quiet certainty. "Some things are simply meant to be. Like a lone cowboy with room in his heart for 3 lost sisters," she teased gently. "Exactly like that." His kiss was tender, a promise of all the days and nights to come. As they returned to their guests hand in hand, Beatrice marveled at the journey that had brought them here from the auction block in Fort Yuma to this moment of perfect belonging. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, with the strength of the family they had built from the most unlikely of beginnings. 5 years later, Willow Creek Ranch had flourished beyond their greatest hopes. The partnership with Holloway had proven profitable for both ranches, and their cattle operation had expanded significantly with the completion of the rail line to Fort Yuma. The original investment from Harrington had been supplemented by others, allowing for improvements that made Willow Creek one of the most productive ranches in the territory. The family had grown as well. Beatrice and Jed were the proud parents of twin boys, James and William, now 3 years old, and a 6-month-old daughter they had named Sarah after Jed's mother. Clara had married Tom, the young ranch hand, 2 years earlier, and they were expecting their first child. Eleanor, to everyone's surprise, had discovered a talent for horse breeding and training that had brought additional renown to Willow Creek. On a warm spring evening, as they sat on the porch watching their sons play in the yard while Beatrice cradled baby Sarah, Jed reflected on the transformation of their lives. "Do you ever think about that day in Fort Yuma?" he asked. "The auction." "Sometimes," Beatrice admitted. "Usually when I'm counting my blessings." He took her free hand, running his thumb over the sapphire ring that now sat alongside a gold wedding band. "I told myself I was doing the right thing, the honorable thing. I never imagined I was actually securing my own happiness." She smiled, leaning against his shoulder. "The best decisions often work that way, I think. We make them for one reason and discover later they served a greater purpose than we knew." From inside the house came the sound of Clara's laughter, followed by Eleanor's voice calling the boys in for their bath. "Our family," Jed said softly, wonder still evident in his voice after all these years. "Built from the most unexpected beginning. The best kind of family," Beatrice replied. "One chosen with the heart." As the sun set over Willow Creek, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, they remained on the porch, hands linked, surrounded by the legacy they had built together, a legacy of love, courage, and the boundless possibilities that come from opening your heart and home when it matters most.